welcome to the Hospital Tech Talk, where we break down the world of the latest techniques, tools, and stories that keep our hospitals running smoothly, including the Sterile Processing Department. Thank you for being part of our community. Together, we are making a difference, one instrument at a time.
Podcast, Hospital Tech Talk, and I'm glad to introduce to you my first guest for this podcast, and it is Mark. Mark is a sterile processing tech, and he's been doing this job for a while.
I'm a sterile processing traveling technician, so I've been doing this for a good 6 years. And my family's come from a medical background, so I like what I do and I enjoy it, and I hope to kind of spread knowledge and have more people get into the field and enjoy what they do. I have two little sisters that are nurses. My little brother was an CNA. My stepmom's an LPN and my father's an LPN. So they've all kind of gone to different ways through the medical field. I've gone more so the surgical route, which hopefully I'm hoping to continue my education to become a surgical or operating nurse, but we'll see what happens. What traveling techs are is pretty much similar to temp workers. You sign with an agency and a company that hospitals, let them know that, hey, we're short staffed and we need additional staff. The agency will then put it on their website that they have hiring positions for these hospitals in different locations, which would be maybe local or could be on the other side of the country. You get a recruiter with that agency. You talk to your recruiter, puts in your application. You go through an interview process with that hospital, and if you get the job, you pretty much you have to travel to wherever that hospital is located that you applied to. I started traveling just because the hospital I was originally working at, I felt like I learned everything I could there. So I started traveling to kind of broaden my horizon, to learn more stuff about the sterile processing field. Because when I first started the sterile processing field, my original task was to become like a manager of sterile processing. And I felt like in order to become a good manager, you have to be exposed to different situations. And when you're at one hospital, you kind of only get exposed to what's there. Whereas if you're at different hospitals, you get put in different situations and you're able to find different solutions that I feel like in the future, especially in this field that's ever so growing, you'll have more information to look back on and more experience to look back on being put into different scenarios. I believe so. Like I do believe, because there are times where I go to hospitals and there's some stuff that they're just introducing there that have been at another hospital for years. So there's been time where I've been more experienced with either with the tools or the technique on how to properly clean certain things than some of the permanent staff. But then at the same time, there have been moments where I've been introduced to stuff I've never seen before in my life. And I'm just like, what's this? And then being educated, saying, okay, cool. Now it's something new that I know that, it helps me benefits me to further my career. One of the more shocking things is definitely the amount of vendor companies that are available to hospitals. You would think that with like such big companies like Smith & Nephew and Synthes and Depew that, they would kind of run the country, but no, you get introduced to like Global Tech, you get introduced to a lot of different other places that you didn't know existed that are still there, and they all kind of specialize in different things. But I would think the one example would definitely be kind of like the robots. At the hospital I started at, I was only introduced to like XI and some of the endoscope robots. But then traveling, I kind of gotten my hands on more different type of robots like SI and just kind of, again, new ways to kind of see how surgeries are done. Like one thing at one hospital that I saw in Ohio with the laps, they were thinking more so of going disposable tip laps route. So rather than having all the laps and having to clean all the different lap instruments, you would only have 5 laps in a tray with different disposable heads that you would just switch when needed. Vendor companies, which are companies that pretty much rent instruments that only that company makes to the hospitals. So with implants as well that are used on patients, anything that you would normally not find at a hospital or not have available at a hospital for extended period of times, they would find vendors who would have those instruments needed that are too expensive or are not used enough to stay at the hospital. And then they would use those vendor companies to bring them in and bring in the new tools, or bring in the tools that, again, wouldn't be used all the time, but only during special procedures where they still would need them.
How about the robotic systems? I think the one that is more that you can hear more about is the Da Vinci system.
Robot arms are kind of similar to lap instruments. They are pretty much non-invasive surgery. Pretty much, instead of cutting open the patient, they would make incisions big enough just for the robot arms or the lap instruments in order to enter inside the patient's body with a camera, of course, and then they would do the whole operation while watching a camera, which, without cutting the patient open, the robot arms are allowing them to able to do the surgery, which would, one, put the patient in, the patient is not as in much danger being cut open, because blood loss and everything else. Also, they can heal a lot faster because it's not like you're not, again, cutting them open. You're kind of making incisions. You're cutting small incisions in order for the robot arms to get into. That way, they're able to do the surgeries, have quicker healing times, and less of a risk of complications. Because with the medical field in general, it's an ever-growing field, so there's always going to be new stuff introduced. So again, you have to be open to learning every single day, because it might be a week, it might be a month, but you're always going to learn something new in this industry. But I can honestly say, I don't think I'm there quite yet, because again, there's still a lot to learn. But I do feel appreciative, and I do feel like very honored that I'm able to learn what I am able to learn. I first thought about the healthcare industry back probably when I was 14, because at my high school we had this program called HOSA, which anyone who thought about being in the medical field, who eventually wanted to become a nurse or anything like that, it was a program they were able to get into, or apply to get into, and if they were able to get into, it would pretty much teach them steps in order to become nursing students. And at the end, at your senior year graduation, you would become a CNA, which would be the first steps into getting into becoming a nurse. So they would give you the experience needed. They would show you the correct way of how to fix beds, and then the correct way of drawing blood and everything you needed to know as a CNA. So in high school, first hearing about that's when I first became interested in the medical field. And then, of course, my family being like my father, and having cousins as well who are in the medical field, that really I feel like that's what really gave me a jump start in order to kind of jump into the medical field. The only issue is when I first heard about it, I wasn't sure exactly what route I wanted to take, because there's so many different routes. HOSA, I'm not quite sure if it's in every school district, but it was in my school district for, again, people who were interested in the medical field. The best way to find out would just be to check with your high school guidance counselor, and hopefully they'll be able to lead you into the right way of knowing whether or not your school has programs for people who want to make that early decision of going into the medical field. But back home, they had that program, and it was just kind of like, again, they would teach you just everything just to kind of get you into, pretty much they would show you how to be a CNA that way, and then allow you to do clinicals as a CNA to kind of make sure if this is something you wanted to do. And one of the benefits of doing it in high school is the fact that it's free, whereas going into college, you're experiencing it, but also having to spend a lot of money just to kind of decide whether or not this is a career you want to get into. With the group of people I was with, they weren't really interested into the medical field at that time. They were more so interested in joining the military or even going into tech. But you do find people who are interested into the medical field, and hearing from them and then talking to them, it does make you feel a little bit more comfortable to get into the field. But there are times where you hear other stories that kind of scare people away from the field, like being a CNA, having to deal with working in old nursing homes, you having to deal with death on a almost daily basis. So you do hear a lot of stories from a lot of people once you actually start meeting the people who are interested in the field and who have actually already who are in the field. I think one story that really kind of stuck to me was a friend of mine. She was starting off as an ER nurse, and she had to deal with a car crash that just happened, and it was definitely pretty traumatizing for her, because seeing a family in a pretty bad car accident, especially seeing with like with us working at a kids hospital, seeing children who were also being affected by the accident, that had a huge impact on her. And sadly, because of that, and she wasn't able to handle that kind of scene, she kind of ended up leaving the medical field because of that. But that definitely was a story that stuck to me, letting you know that there are going to be times where it's not all going to be great. It's not always going to be about rainbows. There are going to be times where you have to be mentally strong for your patients, because there are going to be some stuff where either you get attached to the patient and they're going through something like cancer, or again, being an ER nurse, you're going to be the first response when you see a lot of car accidents or fires or anything, really detrimental to the people physically. With being a sterile processing tech, a lot of hospitals do require you to actually sit into the surgeries and watch the surgeries, so that way you can actually see that you're dealing with real people, you're dealing with their lives. One thing I wasn't prepared for was definitely the smell of burnt flesh during one of the surgeries I was participating in. A patient had really bad burns, and with them doing grafting on them, it was definitely a new experience. I've also heard stories about one of my friends, Mike. One of his surgeries had to sit into. There was a gentleman with his leg was swollen, and when they cut into the leg, come to find out a lot of blood in the gentleman's leg was coagulated. So he had to watch them kind of take out a lot of that coagulated blood from the gentleman's leg. Grafting is when they use a machine or a tool to take off skin from one area to the body and put it into another area of the body to allow it to heal, to replace the skin that you lost from that area. I was first introduced to sterile processing. It was introduced to me as a gateway to get into the surgical field, because to me that's always where I've wanted to be. I've wanted to be in this more so surgery aspects of everything. With nursing being a 4-year degree and surgical tech being a 2-year degree, sterile processing was a good starting point, because it would allow me to get into the medical field faster, get into the surgical side faster, but also give me opportunities to kind of learn more things that would help and benefit me in moving up to nursing. Whereas if I wanted to become a surgical tech, you still got to know the instrumentation, which again would start from sterile processing. And then from being sterile processing, being liaison, running for the operating rooms, you get to watch some of the surgeries. Again, you get to see new experiences you get to meet the nurses who are already in the field, and you can ask them questions about some of the things that they have to do. So to me, it was introduced as a gateway in order to get to different levels if need be. Sterile processing, depending on the hospital, is definitely located in different areas of a hospital. Some hospitals may be located in the basement, and others might be located on a higher floor. It's a job where we're the people who deal with everything before the surgeries, as well as dealing with everything after the surgeries. We get all tools needed and all the stuff needed for the surgery, that everything that the surgeon would need for that surgery together. We make sure that they have everything needed for the surgery. We make sure that all the instrumentation, or vendors or even implants are safe for patient use, where we're either with checking the functionality, checking the cleanliness, and also sterilizing, making sure that there are no bacteria or germs on that instrument that could potentially harm the patient or give them an infection. And also it helps with and we also have to deal with being liaisons, which is pretty much if the operating room needs anything, having to speak to either the nurses or surgical techs about anything needed and grabbing anything they may need for that surgery that wasn't first needed at the beginning of the surgery. Yeah, there's going to be stress, and sterile processing is not an exception. There is times where it's because it's due to miscommunication. Sometimes what's been told either is old information or it's hard to get new information down when needed. You don't find out new information until it's a little too late, or you have to rush. Or moments where the hospital doesn't have enough of that tray, but they schedule too many surgeries for that tray for that day, and that's also frustrating because now you have to make sure no mess ups or nothing happened while getting that tray prepped for the surgery and for the next use. I think one day, I can't remember the name of the tray, but it was a tray where the hospital only had 2 available of that tray, but they scheduled 4 surgeries. 3 of the surgeries were back to back. So it was pretty stressful because the OR will call down saying that they sent the tray down, and then you're looking for the tray and just like, I don't see it, where is it? And only to find out that it's either been stuck on the elevator or it's just now leaving the surgery, and there have been some complications with the people who are supposed to deliver the tray who weren't able to deliver the tray at that moment. Or even moments where the wrong tray has been sent down and just like, no, this isn't the tray you asked for. And then a mistake, okay, then they have to go look for it. And then, but at the same time, you're kind of stressed out because the tray is needed. Yeah. And you have to kind of get it out as quickly as possible. So it's just kind of like it's cutting down on your time in order to make sure the tray has been done correctly to be able to be used on patients. If anyone asked me to join or ask me about the healthcare industry, I would tell them, the first thing I would ask is, do you have the mental capacity or the stomach for the stuff that may end up happening? And also depending on what department you're getting into, whether or not you're going to be able to mentally do the job needed, because you're dealing with people's lives. So you have to remember that. You have to remember, regardless of what kind of day you're dealing with, what kind of emotions you're in, your work is affecting someone's life, their future, their present, and also their family's lives. So if you're able to understand that and comprehend that, then I would say, yeah, I would definitely suggest getting to the health field, because there are moments where you do have to kind of, take a step back, but it's a good feeling when you help a family or help a patient know that you were there to help them in a time of need. So if you're someone who loves helping people and who can also deal with the stress of being there when they're at their worst, then I would definitely suggest being in the healthcare field. Okay, one of the benefits to me for being a sterile processing tech is that the fact that you're able to help patients and help people when they're at their worst without having to actually be there. You're behind the scenes. So if you're someone who aren't able to emotionally deal with people, it's definitely a good way to still be in the healthcare field, and help people without actually having to deal with the patients directly. With being a traveling tech, one of the benefits is going to different environments and just observing and learning and experiencing different ways that departments are being ran. You get to see good ways that you can adapt to if you're trying to become a management, to how you feel to properly run the department. To enter the field, it definitely depends on the region you're in, the location. Some places require you to actually go to a college, a community college, and study there, while other places are okay with you doing on-hands learning as well as studying for the certification. Personally, I went through the school route, did the studying, applying in school, and then doing clinicals, testing whether or not I would really like pretty much saying that, yeah, I really do like the job. And then there, after getting my certification, applying for jobs and getting hired. With the other route, with the hospital, it is a little bit more secure because though you go to school for it, there's not always a guarantee that you might get a job after you graduate. Whereas getting on-hands training, as long as you're able to pass the certification test, you're getting paid to be trained, as well as you have a guaranteed job once your training is done. So to get certified, it comes down to your ability to be able to take tests and your ability to study. If you're good at studying, if you're good at taking tests, then as long as you study the material correctly and, well enough, you'll be fine. But for people who are not great test takers, it's definitely going to be a little bit of a learning curve for you, because you're going to have to kind of conquer that fear or conquer that, I guess,
ability
to be able to get better at taking tests. Because there are people who are pretty well informed in the field, but just because of test taking, they aren't able to get their certification, or it might take them a little longer to get their certification. As long as, I guess the most important thing is just dedication. Keep trying to find other ways of studying to help you, and keep trying to find other ways in order to help you get over your fear of taking tests. As long as you're dedicated, I feel like, as long as you're dedicated and willing to put in the work, I feel like anybody would be fine. Do your research. Fine, because there are going to be some situations that you're not going to be able to get everything, put out in front of you. So make sure you do your research, make sure you do your due diligence, and just finding out. And then also with doing the research, there are a lot of times you'll find out that programs that you didn't know existed are there to help and assist you get into the field. Like, again, whether or not there are hospitals that will do the training you, or even scholarships saying that, yeah, if you want to get into this field, we'll pay for the scholarships, which a lot of hospitals actually do. They'll reimburse people who want to, as long as you're willing to work for their hospital, they'll reimburse you for going to school.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mark. I'm so glad that you were my first interview for this podcast. Thank you again, Mark.
No problem. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, this is Hospital Tech Talk, your podcast related to the healthcare environment and the Sterile Processing Department. Thank you very much, all, and I see you in the next chapter. I see you in the next episode. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning into Hospital Tech Talk, where we talk about the stories that keep our hospitals running smoothly, including the Sterile Processing Department. Remember, every instrument you process plays a role in patient care. Thanks for being part of our community. Together, we are making a difference, one instrument at a time. See you next episode.